The ones who walk away from Omelas. So the story is basically a thought experiment. The narrator asks you to imagine a city called Omelas. It's not utopia in a futuristic sense, it's just a place where people are genuinely happy. There's music and festivals and pleasure, like ordinary lives that actually feel good. Omelas is a perfect city. Everyone's happy. There's no war, no poverty, and people live joyful lives. The narrator even lets you imagine it however you want, because the details don't matter. The narrator keeps interrupting and saying, basically, if you don't like this version, imagine another one. What matters is that the happiness is real. But then you're told the condition. Somewhere in Omelas there's a small locked room. Inside it there's a child. The child is malnourished, neglected, and kept in darkness, and never shown kindness. The door is locked, and the child is never allowed to leave. Everyone in Omelas eventually learns about this child, and they're told the rule very clearly. The happiness of the entire city depends on that child's suffering. If the child is ever freed or even shown kindness, the joy of Omelas would disappear. At first, people are horrified when they learn this. Some cry, some feel sick, some try to justify it. But most eventually accept it. They convince themselves that one child's suffering is worth the happiness of thousands. Some people, after seeing the child, don't argue. They simply leave. They walk away from the city, alone, in silence, toward a place that isn't described. The story never tells you where they go. It never tells you if their choice helps anyone. It just leaves you with the question, is a perfect society still moral if it requires one innocent person to suffer? And if you refuse that bargain, what does walking away actually mean? A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen L. Peck. So this story starts with the narrator dying and waking up in the afterlife. He expects heaven or hell, but instead he's told something unsettling. One specific religion was correct, and it wasn't his. It turns out the ancient Zoroastrian faith was right. Because of that, he's sent to hell. But this isn't fire or torture. Hell is a library. An infinite one. Every possible book exists there. Somewhere in this library is a book that tells the exact story of your life, and the rule is simple. If you find your book, you can leave. At first, this doesn't sound so bad. People organize searches, they keep records. Some find books that are close but never exact. The library is infinite. The number of meaningless books is infinite, and the odds of randomly finding the correct one are effectively zero. Eventually, after an incomprehensible amount of time, the narrator does find his book. He earns his release. From the outside, his stay was technically finite, but from the inside, from any meaningful perspective, it was indistinguishable from eternity. The Screwfly Solution by Raccoona Sheldon. So the story is told entirely through documents, medical reports, news articles, and interviews. There's no single narrator explaining what's happening. At first, the documents describe a rise in violent assaults and crimes, and the pattern is really strange, because men are becoming aroused by violence toward women. The violence isn't random. It's tightly linked to sexual response. Doctors and psychologists argue about causes. Some start blaming on culture. Some say it's mass hysteria. But the behavior keeps spreading. Eventually, the truth comes out. An alien intelligence has been subtly altering human reproduction by changing sexual behavior. Men are being conditioned to see women as targets instead of partners. The change isn't increased aggression in general. It's specific. Normal sexual attraction is being rewired so that violence itself becomes the trigger. Women aren't just unsafe. They're biologically incompatible with male desire. As this spreads globally, society starts adapting. The title comes from the real-world Screwfly, an insect species that was nearly wiped out by manipulating its breeding cycle. The same principle is being applied to humans. As violence increases, women are isolated and guarded. Birth rates crash. Entire regions fall apart. The species is being eliminated by turning reproduction into self-destruction. There Will Come Soft Rains by Bradbury. The story takes place after a nuclear war has already wiped everything out. What's left is one house. The house is fully automated. It talks, it cooks, it cleans, it runs on schedules. It was designed to take care of a family, and it still believes that family exists. At 7 o'clock in the morning, the house wakes up and announces the date. It prepares breakfast, and then complains when no one eats it. Outside, the city is gone. The ground is radioactive. As the day continues, the house follows its routines exactly. It reminds children to go to school, it opens and closes doors, it runs the cleaning systems. At one point, the house cleans the exterior walls. And this is where Bradbury quietly shows you what happened. On the side of the house are silhouettes burned into the wall. The outline of a man mowing the lawn, a woman picking flowers, two children holding a ball. The blast erased them instantly, leaving only shadows behind. Throughout the day, the house performs more empty tasks. It sets up a bridge game for guests who will never arrive. In the nursery, mechanical animals still move and play, even though there are no children left to watch them. In the evening, the house reads a poem aloud, because it's scheduled to. The poem is called There Will Come Soft Rains by Sarah Teasdale. It describes a world where nature continues peacefully after humanity destroys itself. After that, the house continues its routine. It prepares dinner. It announces the time. It locks the doors for the night. And then something goes wrong. A tree branch, weakened by time and neglect, falls and crashes through a window. The house detects a fire. Immediately, the automated systems respond. Mechanical mice rush out, trying to clean the mess. Walls spray water. Mechanical snakes slither from the walls to fight the flames. The house uses every system it has, but the fire spreads faster than the systems can adapt. The house keeps announcing the time even as parts of it burn away. Eventually, the fire consumes almost everything. By morning, the house is gone. All Tomorrows. All Tomorrows by CM Koseman is basically a future history of humanity that spans something like 1 billion years. And the core idea is really simple. Humans spread across the galaxy, and then everything goes wrong. The book is written like a speculative documentary, almost like you're reading a biology textbook from the far future, except it's about us. So it starts with near-future humans, finally leaving Earth for real. We develop advanced space travel, genetic engineering, and terraforming. And instead of staying one unified species, humanity splits across different parts of the galaxy. Mars is basically under construction for a very long time, so humans can actually live there without constant support. Eventually, it works well enough that people begin staying permanently. Children grow up under a Martian sky. They take their first steps on ground that was never meant for them. These children aren't just visitors. Mars is their home. At first, none of this causes conflict. Some believe the planet should be fully converted into something as close to Earth for efficiency and expansion. Gradually, these disagreements stop being theoretical. Different factions begin asserting control over infrastructure. The shared effort that once defined Mars starts breaking apart. And then, without a single clear starting moment, it becomes a war. This is humanity's first interstellar civil war. Stations and habitats are destroyed. Terraforming systems are damaged or deliberately targeted, setting progress back again and again. Eventually, both factions reach the same conclusion. They realize that continuing this conflict will only guarantee long-term damage to both planets. So, they finally negotiate. Terraforming resumed under shared control. For a brief period, it feels like things might recover. Mars continues to develop. The Star People try to stabilize their civilization and move forward again. But then, the Q arrives. The Q are an ancient, godlike alien civilization. They're not explorers in the curious sense, but more like cosmic engineers. Their entire culture revolves around genetic manipulation. They see life as raw material, something to be reshaped into whatever fits their ideology. So the Q captures all the human species in the galaxy. Humans fight back, but it doesn't matter. And instead of exterminating humans, the Q do something much worse. They genetically modify every human civilization they can reach, to strip away intelligence and trap them in forms that reflect what the Q think of them. This is where the book really starts to get disturbing. Different branches of humanity are transformed into wildly different post-human species, each one adapted to some narrow ecological niche, often with their intelligence removed or heavily reduced. So, eventually, the Q leave the galaxy. They don't stay to rule or even monitor their work. They just move on, satisfied that they've corrected a biological mistake. For millions of years, these post-human species just exist. Some go extinct, some adapt further. Some species regain intelligence, but in a very few lineages because in certain environments, intelligence and complexity is useful. Some evolved in space habitats, and one of these lineages became the Lopsiders. And, because they lived in rotating habitats with uneven gravity, their bodies evolved asymmetrically. One of the most important of these later groups were the Asteromorphs. The Asteromorphs are descendants of space-adapted humans who avoided the Q's modifications by living in deep space habitats. Over time, they evolve into tall, fragile-looking beings with massive brains and elongated limbs, and a deep connection to technology. Different post-human species coexist. Some are still physically monstrous by our standards, but they're people again. For a while, it almost feels hopeful. Eventually, the Asteromorphs themselves begin to change. Their physical forms matter less and less. Their consciousness spreads into artificial substrates. They stop thinking in individual terms. They become something closer to a distributed intelligence than a species. For a long time, the Asteromorphs were gone. They had left the galaxy behind entirely, spreading outward into deep space. changing themselves, refining their bodies and minds over immense stretches of time. And when they returned, the gravitals were everywhere. The machines had taken over star systems, wiping out biological life. The astromorphs didn't try to overpower the gravitals directly. Instead, they targeted their coordination and infrastructure and long-term sustainability. They were divided among themselves and were unable to adapt fast enough. And slowly, they outlasted them. The astromorphs turned the gravitals into a subservient new machine species, stripping them of their power and autonomy to prevent any future war. After that, life slowly returns, new species evolve. Some were faintly connected to humanity, and these later beings uncover the past of humanity. The story itself isn't told by humans. It's told by something far later. Something reconstructing the past from records and remains of humanity's descendants. The Library of Babel. The story describes the universe as a library. According to the narrator, the universe is an infinite library made up of hexagonal rooms. Every room is identical. Each one has bookshelves on 4 walls, a small closet, a place to sleep, and stairways leading endlessly up and down. Every book in the library is the same length and format, same number of pages, same number of lines, same number of characters per line. The only thing that changes is the text. The alphabet is limited, just letters, punctuation, and spaces, and because of that, the library contains every possible combination of those characters, which means every book that could be written already exists. Most books, though, are complete nonsense. The overwhelming majority of the library is unreadable. The people who live in the library are called librarians. They believe the library has always existed and always will. There is no outside world. The library is everything. If every possible book exists, then somewhere there must be a book that explains the library, a book that explains meaning, a book that proves your beliefs are right. Some librarians dedicate their lives to searching for the book of truth. Some believe there must be a single perfect book that justifies everything. But as time goes on, the librarians realize that for every meaningful book, there are endlessly many false versions. For every true sentence, there are infinite, almost true ones buried in nonsense. Finding the right book by searching is practically impossible. People go mad. Some destroy books in anger, throwing them down stairwells, trying to reduce the chaos. Others form cults. Some worship random books. Some kill librarians who disagree with their interpretations. There's even a belief that somewhere in the library exists a book that is the catalog of all catalogs, a book that would finally bring order. Many spend their entire lives searching for it. Over time, the librarians develop a bleak understanding. The existence of all possible knowledge also guarantees the dominance of meaninglessness. Truth exists, but it's buried under infinite noise. That's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll probably cover more stuff like this soon. And thanks for watching.